Hey, good afternoon. It's 12:30. It's time for our Thursday uh, community forum and lunchtime update. We welcome you and glad you joined us today. My name is Jim Norris. Dr. Courtney Carpenter and I are filling in for Dr. Ledbetter as he's out of the office today. But he sends his well wishes and hopes you're having a great week. And today we have a full agenda because there's a lot of things going on. But if any meeting, we like to start with MISD proud moments. And those are not just words we say. Those are things that we believe and we think are so important. And there is so much going on this summer that it's a busy summer. And a lot of people are working very hard to make school a great experience for you and for your students. So here's a few things. We had great representation last week at the second annual All Ellis County Prep All-Stars. That's where they recognize high school coaches and athletes across Ellis County. Both Heritage High School and Midlothian High School had a good number of our athletes as well as our coaches recognized. So we congratulate each one of those. And we want to thank our local newspaper, the Midlothian Mirror, for helping host this. This is a big event, and we think it's good for our kids and our coaches. So Midlothian Mirror, thank you for that. Additionally, if you use our MISD hashtag, MISD Proud hashtag, you will see our teachers are continuing to work all summer long to get professional development. And so bring back, and they're excited about what they can bring back to our students in the fall. Our students receive hundreds of hours of training during the summer. So learning does not stop just when school is not in session. As you know, we began to provide food services immediately when our campuses closed in March due to the COVID. We continue to offer our summertime meals. Airmark excels in that, and Manor House has been great to take over the distribution this summer like they did the last two summers. Since March the 16th, we have distributed 137,534 meals to our kids. The average number of meals every day is a little bit over 1,500. Our construction projects are moving along well. We're very proud of that. We actually started moving our daycare center, the MISD Jenkins Learning Academy, into their new home, which was the old Irvin Elementary School. We're finishing up some renovations in our special ed offices over at the Randall Hill Support Center. They're moving in some furniture there. We are beginning to receive furniture for Dietrich and also the Mile in the next few weeks. So there's a lot to do, but the schedule shows both projects on time and ready to go. So we'll be ready when school starts. Finally, and this is the big thing for all of you, be sure to notice that July the 1st, MISD will have a new look, and we're going to launch a new website. And we know how important a website is for us to be able to communicate effectively with you. And they say when people moved into a new area or when somebody's looking for information, they go to websites now. That's the most important way we can communicate with you. Our new site will be visually appealing and be easier to navigate, so please be watching for that next week. Now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Courtney Carpenter, and she's going to go over our agenda items today.
Thank you, Mr. Norris. Good afternoon, MISD. I've got several things to go over with you today, so just bear with us from our team. So here we go. Our MISD Diversity Council continues to meet. They met actually on Tuesday to begin work in some action teams mentioned during the announcement last week and then yesterday with our staff. These action teams will present their work to the board on July 20th at the regularly scheduled July board meeting for any required board action. Additionally, we will also contract with consultants to help us continue our diversity, equity, and inclusion effort, including reviewing our curriculum to ensure that it's culturally responsive, in addition to other areas. Speaking of diversity and inclusion, last Thursday, we held a community thought exchange during this very time. This thought exchange closed on Monday night, and we shared these results on Tuesday with the Diversity Council. I'm going to take just a few moments to share my screen and share with you some of those results. During that thought exchange, we collected information from our community and our staff. We had 336 participants with 237 thoughts that were actually put into that thought exchange. And we had 6,674 ratings. That means we had that many people rating each other's thoughts. And the question that was posed during that thought exchange last Thursday is, in light of recent events, what is top of mind by you for the future work of the MISD Diversity Council? Those thoughts were also themed into 5 main categories when we went through the data, the crowdsourced data. You'll see here that safe place to report racism and discuss with others, zero tolerance for racism and discrimination, curriculum audit, checks and balances, racism concerns, as well as training for staff as it relates to diversity. So in those 5 main themes, all of those thoughts were rated at a 3.5 to a 4, on average 3.5 to 4 stars. Additionally, we have a web-based version of those thoughts that you can see here on my screen. These are the top set. There were 6 pages of thoughts that were collected, and these are the actual top thoughts as they were rated from the community during the window that thought exchange was open. So I'll leave this here for just a moment, and this information was shared with our Diversity Council on Tuesday, so they were able to, get all the information and the thoughts that our community had. You'll see here empathy, hearing perspectives, experiences of different cultures, acknowledgement of history, students feeling safe in our classrooms, kindness for all diverse backgrounds. You'll see participating in panels like this throughout the year, talking about the thought exchange and allowing our students to have some focus groups and also engage in some thought exchanges. And then also just some areas about working through racism, zero tolerance, and other areas. And you'll see there that those are the top rated thoughts. As you may know, our board in our district heard a lot from our citizens last Monday night in our regularly scheduled June board meeting. Dr. Ledbetter and some of his team met with those who submitted and attended the meeting to participate in the community input portion. Through this meeting, he asked for their input and their highest hopes moving forward for the short term and the long term. As we know, some of those actions can be done quickly and some will take more time. I'm going to share with you now so you can see some of the data collected during that meeting. During that meeting, we held just a listening session where we let the group kind of ideate on ideas and suggestions for the district moving forward. Some of these actions, like I mentioned, can be short term. Some of them can be long term. But this was just an ideation on 2 posters. As they talked and we listened, we tried to script the things that were talked about. Then we themed those into areas, and you'll see curriculum audit processing, which matches the thought exchange data, as well as training. We also had themes of code of conduct, looking at accountability of actions, as well as discipline coding beyond just the traditional TEA codes. Looking at electronic anonymous reporting for staff and students when it comes to racism and discrimination beyond just the crisis link that's currently on our website. Zero tolerance, trusted adults on campus, revisiting the dress code for cultural proficiency there. Data points on groups, better representation in our upper advanced level classes of our minority groups, intentional system for students and resources beyond post-secondary, and then much more of a long term is the hiring and recruitment process for Midlothian ISD. You'll see here on the screen the summer and school year engagement by the Diversity Council. This week, the Diversity Council met to review that thought exchange and community data to begin working in their action teams. They will continue to work and meet every Tuesday, July 7th, July 14th, and then on the 14th, we will review each other's plans and ideas. And then on July 20th, those action teams will present to the school board at the regular meeting on any action items needed. Additionally, over the summer, the Diversity Council will be meeting to work to finalize a mission, as well as their goal development, overarching goal developments. And then in September, October, and November, they will work on those action ideas for different grade spans in the district, working with campus teams on campus launch, and then beginning those crucial conversations with the campus staff to identify campus short and long-term actions beyond what the district has. As you can see, there are very similar themes with the thought exchange in this meeting, this community meeting, and these actions will help to work on those themes for this school year and beyond, as we know that this is a journey for us. As we've communicated over the past several weeks, we're going to shift our focus a little bit here to the reentry process for the fall of 2020. We've had a full task force going since May 7th. I want to honor some of their work with you so that you can see the intentionality behind our current decision-making processes as we prepare to move through this COVID situation into opening for a new school year. Over the course of 4.5 weeks of research and collaboration, the task force recommended remote learning as an option for students to learn from home, if that's with the family's choice, as well as face-to-face learning inside our school buildings. This task force had about 86 members on it. Additionally, it had a group of students that we used as a focus group, students grades 3 through 12. and I'm going to share with you some information on that group. So Mission MISD moving forward and looking at reopening of our schools, that fall 2020 reentry task force, phase 1 has been completed. That was done throughout the month of May when a lot of people in our district are working on closing out a school year and really preparing for that safe graduation for the class of 2020. We had a whole nother group of individuals from the community, campus, and district staff working on a reentry process on what we knew as far as guidelines from the state at that time. We continue to make adjustments based on TEA requirements as they're related to COVID and the reopening of the fall. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. And then as phase 3 will begin to unfold once we have that finalized recommendation and guidelines from the state. Decision-making process involves entities from a national all the way to a local level. Every graphic that you see on here is in some sort of fashion has been involved, information has been involved in our decision-making to this point. We continue to wait on additional guidance from the Commissioner of Education and Texas Education Agency. We conducted a thought exchange that many of you were a part of back in the last part of May when it regards to learning for the fall of 2020. And we crowdsourced all of those thoughts. We had over 18,000 ratings and over 800 thoughts in that exchange. And when we crowdsourced that data, these were our themes. You'll see that they were able to be themed into 3 organizational areas: health protocols, student learning, and technology support. And it's incredibly important to notice that the importance of teachers and human interaction rose to the top many times. You'll see it there for sure in the top 2 bullets, as well as rigor and relevance for remote learning and increasing that as we move forward into a new school year. You'll see there the social distancing efforts, balancing that with student learning when we're inside of the building and showcasing learning that's occurring remotely. Just to kind of let you know how valuable your input is every time we put out a survey or a thought exchange or any other form or fashion that you've been able to engage with us. Since March 16th, 2020, when we had to have an emergency closure right at the end of spring break, we've had over 86,000 engagements. That includes from teacher conversations with our iCoaches and instructional team to teacher surveys, parent surveys, remote learning surveys, our staff meetings that we meet with our staff weekly every Wednesday, our community events that we have every Thursday at 12:30, as well as the calendar survey and every thought exchange that we've completed. So every bit of that information has been brought to each one of these task force groups as we're working through the process of reopening. So as the task force worked through considerations, they crowdsourced in the areas of health and safety, parent choice, because we know that's important for parents moving forward, rigor and relevance for remote learning, as well as what's happening face-to-face in the building, innovation, communication, and then equitable accesses and resources for all students in MISD. When we held our original pre-planning survey and we polled parents about their plans for 2020, 2021, that we had about 44% survey return rate and 80% desire to send their children back to school in the building, while about 20% are wanting a remote learning option. And of course, we will actually have another survey that'll go out, and I'll talk about that in just a moment, but that was our preliminary planning survey. So as we know, we opened the school year this year 100% face-to-face. The opposite end of that continuum is a 100% remote and online, and that's where we ended the year. And nowhere in the beginning of the year last year did we think we would end on the opposite end of the continuum, but we did. And we congratulate our staff on doing that so quickly and efficiently, and we look forward to being able to provide education somewhere in the middle of that next year so that we can take health, safety, and instruction all into consideration as we move forward. 3 things that will really dictate any face-to-face learning options in the fall for any school district, including MISD, is once we receive TEA's final health standards, of which have not been released yet, determining what that social distancing requirement will be inside of our classrooms and our buildings. If there's any required ratios of individuals in a classroom, as well as any requirement of a square footage per student or per teacher. We currently work off of what summer school guidance has been, and those have all been requirements in the summer school guidance, but we are still awaiting the fall guidance. Additionally, self-isolation requirements and what those may look like for students and or staff if they become symptomatic and or test positive and exposures and things like that, and then the usage of PPE and what's going to be expected, required, and or recommended. So just to kind of a communication timeline for this reentry process, I mentioned earlier that that group had been working since the first part of May, when that original thought exchange launched, and then the student focus groups were on May 7th. They worked diligently through that time frame when they presented their recommendations for a remote learning option and a face-to-face option for those that wanted to come back through the first week of June. Since then, our campus principals and our district directors have taken all of that information from those task force recommendations, have compiled basically a framework or a roadmap for reopening that includes parameters that our campuses can work on to prepare to open their buildings. Additionally, as I mentioned, every time we hear from the commissioner, which is sometimes it's twice a week, sometimes it's once a week, we do receive updates and we adjust accordingly. On Tuesday, the Texas Education Agency released some more information regarding this upcoming school year. We were hoping to hear more strictly about the health requirements and standards, but the agency was unable to share any of that information due to the fluidness of COVID-19 numbers and increases in hospitalizations and some other things that are a concern to them right now. But what we do know is this, and this is much more on the instructional aspect. Districts will be able to offer face-to-face instruction as well as online options. The face-to-face learning is a primary way for us to offer an overall educational experience for our students, because it includes the social, emotional, and the academic learning through that human interaction piece. But additionally, we know that remote will continue to be an option for us, and I'll go into that in just a minute. Additionally, for face-to-face learning, once TEA develops and releases the health standards for 2020-2021, MISD will be able to determine if that face-to-face learning for students can occur 5 days a week, or if it's going to need to be on an alternating hybrid schedule. That is what we don't know yet, because we do not know what those standards will be in terms of how many will be able to be in the building at a time. No matter what, our goal as a district is to maximize the amount of face-to-face time based on the required health standards for those that choose to come back to school in the buildings. While face-to-face learning is preferred by many MISD families, we understand that some parents will prefer a remote learning option for their children, and that's okay. Through remote learning, MISD teachers will cover all the same curriculum as face-to-face learning with both rigor and the highest standards of excellence. With the remote learning option, there will be requirements that improve student engagement, work completion, and grading expectations from what was required in the spring semester once COVID happened and we were in full remote learning. As far as the remote online learning options for families that the state is going to allow, students in grades 3 through 12 will be able to receive synchronous live instruction remotely, or they can receive asynchronous instruction remotely. And I'll go into both of those in just a moment. If a parent chooses remote learning for a pre-K through 2nd grade student, the state will allow that student to be able to engage in asynchronous instruction if they opt for online learning. Both methods have been approved to be funded by TEA, and MISD is currently reviewing both options to determine the method of combination of methods to which we will deliver that remote instruction. I'm going to show you now a slide that will explain a little bit that comes straight from TEA. And it will allow you to see a little bit of what synchronous, which is method A, and asynchronous method B. So synchronous instruction is requiring all participants that are learning remotely to be present at the same time virtually. An example could be a live interactive class where students and teachers are participating real time through their device and through a webcam. Teacher supports work time on video conference calls and scheduled and timed online tests. That's available for students in grades 3 through 12 if they so choose to have a remote learning option. Method B is an asynchronous instruction. It does not require all participants to be virtually present at the same time. It's more of a self-paced online course with intermittent teacher instruction, and where the pre-assigned work is and assessments can be in the learning management system. For example, inside of Canvas or inside of Seesaw in grades pre-K through 2. So that's available for students in grades pre-K through 12 if they choose the remote learning option. No matter what, Both methods will deliver the same required curriculum as identified in the Texas Education Code and our Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills. So synchronous learning is, as we know, is defined as a live instruction. Asynchronous is more of as a self-paced. For students opting online instruction, instruction will need to look differently than what it looked like this spring to address the rigor while maintaining the highest standards of excellence. We also need to be prepared that if we have to temporarily close a classroom or an entire school building, that we may have to switch to online learning for all. And that's the goal for MISD, is to be prepared for any of those situations. We know that all of this can continue to create some anxiety for families and for staff, but we will work through all of this together. Remember, there are many questions we still cannot answer because there's so much of it hinges on the health standards that TEA will release to us in the coming weeks. Like I mentioned in the above slide deck, 3 things will dictate that face-to-face learning experience in the fall. It's the social distancing requirements, self-isolation if symptomatic or a positive test, and any required usage of PPE. There's just still some unknowns that we cannot answer yet. This week, principals and supervisors are working with their staff to find out which staff will be able to return to the buildings, as well as department level staff, so that we can get a picture as to if we're going to have staff that will be required to work from home or in the buildings. What we still need to know is we're hoping to receive guidelines on the protocols required for entering the campus or school facility, if face masks will be required, and if so, when and where in the buildings, if social distancing will be required in the classroom, hallways, other areas of the building, on our school buses, and what that TEA definition will be and expectation will be, what it looks like for recess and other large events, and how that will need to look if we can even continue having some of those. And then additionally, we're waiting on guidance from TEA and UIL as it relates to fine arts and athletic recommendations for back to school practices, competitions, and more. With these listed questions and many others, we believe that the Texas Education Agency will release additional information in July. With that said, our hope is that we can have all decisions and have them communicated by July 30th. We want them out sooner than later. We understand that. We want them out there as much as anyone else does, but we're waiting. There's certain pieces we're waiting on before we can make final decisions. Soon, we will be asking parents to select their preference that they have for learning in the fall, virtual or face-to-face, after we receive all the health protocols from the Texas Education Agency. We recognize that many of these health requirements will help inform our parents on what they feel is in the best interest of their child during this pandemic. This will be a fast turnaround when this option form goes out so that we can staff accordingly. We anticipate to distribute that form within the next, really the next week and a half is our goal, if we can get some additional information from the state by Tuesday or Thursday of next week. That is all we have for the agenda items. I know that was a lot to share with you. I appreciate you staying on with us today, and just know that we will continue to work to push out information as soon as we can in a timely manner so that you can make plans and you will understand what the fall is going to look like. But we do appreciate your support, and we hope that you have a wonderful day, and thank you for joining us.